Today I'm going to talk about Tales, Tasks, Tools, and Talk by Timothy S. McKinney and Gregory D. Foley. But in my first couple of slides, I'm going to give some of my personal thoughts, go into the summary of the article, and then close with some more of my thoughts, and then my reference page. What I see as a problem being a substitute teacher is in all grades there seems to be a basic lack of solid foundation and knowledge for students. I see this when they get stuck doing word problems and can't understand what it's asking them. A lot of times they get too many answers wrong on basic math problems, or they just plain guess at answers and give up too easily. Part of the issue, I think, is a lack of fluency, i.e., the vocabulary words they have in their background. Also, we tend to teach math in a vacuum and don't tie it into everyday life. I remember one time being in a math class and asking students what they did, what we'd use math for, and most of them said just to become a teacher. And then I pulled out pictures of military ships, satellites, weapon systems, aircraft, and told them they could use math to create new systems, new technology, new designs for ships, and those kinds of things. And they were really surprised that they could use math in another realm other than just being a teacher. I also think we give them too many worksheets and not enough hands-on things to help tie the math concepts to real world and also appeal to the multiple intelligences of our students. Also, math, I believe, comes from God because we have to think thoughts after God. And one of my favorite scientists is Johann Kepler, who's responsible for the laws of planetary motion. We still use his concepts and laws today. It helped us put a man on the moon. We use it to put rockets in space. We use it for our weapon systems when we launch ballistic missiles up into space and come back down. Has a lot of modern application. Other famous scientists down through history included Isaac Newton, Louis Pasteur, Mendel, Linnaeus, Galileo. So all across the realm, these scientists believed that God's word was the basis for everything and their research. Of course, if we look at the Bible, God created fractions because he created things in 6 days. He used ratios when he brought the animals to Noah on the ark. He had 7 clean and 2 unclean animals, again a ratio. Cubits is used to for when God gave him directions to build the ark and the tabernacle, and a cubit is the standard from the elbow to the fingertip. Of course, a 24-hour day is a measurement of hours and days. And God also says in Genesis 1 that he gave us the stars to be able to navigate by. Ships and early pioneers used stars quite a bit. Also, a talent is used in multiple ways. One, it's a weight, about 75 pounds in the Bible, and also it's a monetary unit, whether it was made of gold or silver. And of course, the Jewish day starts at sundown to sunset, which is kind of different from what we do. We consider the day starting in the morning. Also, I believe that children are naturally curious. They like to touch things. They like to talk. They like to play games, talk to their friends, colors, places, smells. They like to touch, climb on things, tear things apart, hopefully put them back together, try to learn new words, play with things, and they just like to learn about the world around them. And then they also want to share those discoveries with us. And I think when we give them the attention and the time to tell us about their discoveries, that creates motivation within the student to continue future learning. What's being found is using children's literature books. It's a great tool to help children learn math across all the different content areas like science and social studies and things like that. It used to be we taught math out of textbooks and maybe some videos, but now it's basically differentiated instruction to engage them across all of the visual, oral, and those kinds of things to help them learn math. Going to the article now, part of the article dealt with the Better Mathematics Through Literacy program. It helped teachers and specialists take reading textbooks and math and creating real-life story problems, how they would do certain things or calculate and add things. And by doing this and applying it to everyday life, it reduced stress for students in having to learn math. And they found that students learned to enjoy reading and math at the same time. Well, why is this important? Well, we probably take it for granted, but we measure a lot of things throughout the day without even thinking about it. Counting, when we tie math to real world things, we count. It helps students with number representation, ratios, functions. Um, it helps students learn their tens, hundreds, how to group things together rather than just looking at things one individual item at a time. They learn their shapes, which we talked about this week in one of our assignments. And also, it correlates into other disciplines like in science, DNA mapping, um, experiments about seeing how fast plants grow over time, measuring quantities like pouring liquids together and weights and things like that. In art, it deals with rhythm and music and designs and colors and paint mixtures, English language arts, poetry meter, writing paragraphs. This is all part of measurement. Social studies. I had created a lesson in another class for students how to learn to do latitude and longitude and be able to track themselves across a continent looking at the topography and how long it would take them doing time distance problems, which I think really, if it was really taught, I think would help them incorporate math. How do we do that? We use tasks to help them see and investigate math in around them, in the classroom, in the hallways, in the lunch hall, in the playground. And we help them learn to think and talk about numbers, how to compare objects, how big it is, how small it is, compare it to other objects, inches, meters, yardsticks, feet, those kind of things. And we use a lot of tools, a lot of hand-on things to help them understand math. And also using whole group and small group discussions to exchange ideas, exchange strategies, and how they solve the particular problem. Maybe this will work better, maybe that'll work better. And we talked about that a few weeks ago during our estimation exercises. Again, we can tie language into math by helping students do experiments such as how many steps it takes to get across a room, who has the biggest, who's the tallest, who's the shortest, who has the bigger foot, the smallest foot. Does that make a difference when they measure steps across the room? Just all kinds of things that help students learn to count and around them. Putting math anchor charts up on the wall dealing with units of measurement is also a visual representation. Using vocabulary words. Hey, what is heavy, heavier, heaviest? They see the root word of heavy or light, lighter, lightest. So they start seeing, saying, and hearing these words amongst themselves and from the teacher. They talk about length and area, space, volume, those kinds of things. So they learn these vocabulary words so when they read them in the textbooks and trade books, they understand what these words mean. Estimation, which we had a lesson on not too long ago, it helps students at an early age to develop their critical thinking skills. What is being measured? How's it being measured? Is my guess or their guess reasonable? It helps them compute numbers rather than just taking a shot in the dark. And for example, in the article, it talks about how tall is something using cookies or crackers. I saw a teacher last year, they measured things like how wide the door was, the door frame, using Tootsie Rolls, or how wide their desks were, doing different things like that, helping them make reasonable guesses. And what the research has shown, by doing this in early age, students learn later on how to make better and more reasonable guesses and estimations on things. It also improves their problem-solving skills. In geometry, we talked about that this week, how to teach geometric shapes and Van Heel's model and the different levels. They learn to recognize, analyze, and compare and reason about shapes. How are they similar? How are they different? Are they different sizes? What's the texture? Using more technical vocabulary as they go through the different stages. And as the more they do this, the more they become familiar They create a scaffolding process. They learn sizes and other attributes, and they can apply this to one particular geometric shape or multiple geometric shapes to compare them together. In summary, what the article basically was, students need to see how they measure things every day on a regular basis and across other disciplines, making a conscious effort to teach math in these other things such as social studies and science and English language arts, and creating lessons to tie all that in together and see the importance of math and to be able to communicate what they're thinking, how they're solving problems, and asking questions and answering questions of each other and of the teacher. Here's a list of books that most of these came right out of the article, but I found some other ones online. Some of these are basically for younger students, and a few of these are for also older students, such as 7th, 8th, and 9th graders, and so on. Very great books, and I've looked at some, and there's plenty more out there to look at. My closing thoughts, I think we need to allow students to brainstorm ideas on how and what they want to measure. Somebody had mentioned in one of their posts about using rice and cups, which is a great idea. Another article I had reviewed talked about using rope and creating a human number line so students can understand fractions using unconventional methods such as these. Let the students teach and let the teachers learn from the students. When I was doing substitute teaching last year, for about a week and a half, I allowed the students to actually teach the lesson to each other. And it was really amazing because, well, after a couple of days, the students started disciplining themselves to listen to whoever was teaching because they may have been called on next. And I noticed the questions started to become more complex as they asked and worked in their groups. I would also invite guest speakers in the classroom, somebody from like Missouri S&T, which is just up the road, to bring in some scientists, mathematicians, and other things like that. Get advice from more experienced teachers who've been doing this for 15, 20, 25 years, what they would do. And I'll continually read some more on other ideas. Look at websites, books that are out there, how to teach math, how to do differentiated instruction. And here's my list of references. There's plenty more out there. There's some at the end of the article as well that validate that teaching math in all the disciplines helps the students in every discipline, not just teaching it in a vacuum all by itself. So thank you very much, and you have a great day.